Hi, welcome to Quilting with Lori. My name is Lori Dickman, and I welcome you to week number 18 of my 52-week series of Scrappy Blocks. Every Monday I'm presenting a new block to you, and this one is a really fun one. I want to give you a little bit of background on how I put this one together. Before I share this block with you, I do want to let you know that if you are making quilts using my Scrappy Blocks, I would love to see photos of them. You can go out to my Facebook page, Quilting with Lori, Scrap It Up, and post those pictures there, or you can send them to me via my website, quiltingwithlori.com. I would love to see the quilts that you're making with your scrap stash using these blocks. I did have a viewer who has been working on a quilt, and she sent me a picture this weekend. It's beautiful. So I'm going to share that with you. Her name is Deb Hover, and she's from Dousman, Wisconsin. She used a beautiful pink palette with her scraps, and all of it is from her scrap stash except for the sashing. So the only thing she said that she had to buy was just the sashing. So let's take a look at that beautiful quilt that she's presented to me. It is always inspiring to me to hear from my viewers that you are in fact using these blocks and making a beautiful scrappy quilts with them. So please comment or send me a link or go out on my Facebook page and post pictures. I would love to see them, and so would others, because it is very inspiring to see the quilts that we all make. So a little bit of background on this particular block and how it came about. This past Thursday, I attended our guild meeting here in Rockford, and we always have a free table. I'm sure you all have free tables at your guilds too, and I saw some purple fabrics. They were squares. The squares were about, I don't know, 15 by 14 inches maybe, and there was about 6 or 7 of them. And I grabbed those. They were these purple squares, and I scrapped them or cut them up into 2.5-inch lengths. So I've got quite a few of these 2.5-inch lengths, and I just started playing around and came up with this twist and turn block. And here it is. This is simply using 2.5-inch strips from your stash and 2.5-inch squares from your stash. It is so simple to make, but because of how these strips are oriented, it makes a secondary design when you put the quilt together. So I want to show you that. Let's take a look. So first of all, I want to mention that there is a PDF attached in the description box below. So make sure that you open that up and save it to your computer or print it out so that you'll have that for future. But this is just the simple instructions on how to put the block together, as well as the quilt itself. And this shows you how there is a secondary design that pops out. Every time I look at it, I am focusing in on a different design. That's really fun when a block will do that for you in a quilt. You'll see here I've got quite a few strips from those, I think it was 6 or 7 squares that I cut those up, and this is going to make quite a few blocks for me. So I'm kind of excited about that. Now I want to lay these out so that you can actually see these and how they make the beautiful design. Okay, so I'm going to lay these out. The best way to make sure that this lays out correctly is, first of all, to lay them all in the same orientation in front of you, and then you can place them next to one another, either on your design wall or the floor, wherever. And it's kind of hard to see it all here. So I've put my camera on a different mount so that you can see more of these 4 blocks. I simply have 4 blocks laying here. And it is really fun to take a look at this and just see all of the different designs, the secondary designs that pop out at you. The cross or the circular motion, there's so many things happening here. And I really love that. And you'll kind of see that as you look at your quilt pattern suggestion on the back of the PDF. So make sure that you go ahead and print that out or save it so you'll have it for future. And then of course you want to make sure that everything is oriented in the same direction. Each block has the strip set going vertically here and horizontally here, and that helps to create that design. So as you're putting it together, you want to make sure you accomplish that. Another thing that I've done, I have simply used the purples, those fabrics that I had gotten at the quilt show, or excuse me, at our Quilt Guild meeting, as well as some lights to make those strip sets. So that is going to be the uniform strip set throughout the entire quilt. And it gives some uniformity to the scrap quilt. I love it. And then each and every block is completely different. I'm using mediums and darks and sometimes complementary, sometimes contrasting variations, and adding them in. Really fun. So I'm just grabbing 5 mediums and 4 darks from my 2.5-inch squares, and these of course are all strip sets. So simple to put together. Let's take a look at what I pulled for that. So your PDF will tell you what you need to pull, but what I did for each and every block, I have 2 complete strip sets. They are 6.5 inches long by 2.5 inches wide, and I'm putting 2 purple with a white in each of those strip sets. That's how I'm creating those. So I cut my squares that I had gotten from the guild meeting in 2.5-inch lengths, and then I subcut them into 6.5-inch. And then I had a bunch of 2.5-inch, they're jelly rolls basically. So if you have a lot of jelly rolls in your stash, this is a great quilt for that. And I just subcut those into 6.5-inch lengths. So that's going to be for 1 block. And then I have pulled 4 darks and 5 mediums for the 9 patches. And so each of these blocks has 2 complete 9 patches and 2 complete strip sets. And these squares are all 2.5-inch squares. So you can use your jelly roll and just subcut them into 2.5-inch squares, or you can pull them from your Speedy Solutions scrap stash. Just go to your 2.5-inch bin and grab what you need. So there's a variety of ways you can make this. Now let's go to the sewing machine and see how I put this together. Okay, so I have laid the block out here next to my sewing machine. I have the strip set going vertically here and horizontally here, and I have the 9 patches here. So the 4 darker squares are on the inside basically, and then the 5 lighter squares are placed there. And I think what I'm going to do is start with my strip sets and get those sewn, and then I'll put my 9 patches together. Very simple on just using this 1/4-inch seam allowance. If you already have strip sets sewn together that are leftover remnants from previous projects, and they're the 2.5-inch wide strip sets, you could simply cut those strip sets into 6.5-inch units, and then that step for you is already done. So that's definitely something that you can do. Your blocks don't have to all have the purple with cream strip sets in them. You could certainly make yours very scrappy. I just plan to go ahead and use the purple and cream in mine. So you can make it as scrappy as you want. And if you do have strip sets that are the 2.5-inch wide, just simply cut them up into 6.5-inch units, and that step for you is already done. So now I'm going to go ahead and put together my 9-patch units. I'm going to web each 9-patch individually, and then I'll go ahead and put the block together. I will press it and square up each unit. Each of these units does need to be squared up to 6.5 inches before we sew it together. So let me get this webbed together, and you can watch that in fast motion, and I'll be right back. As I'm webbing these blocks together, what you see me doing is finger pressing the seam allowance so that it's toward the dark. In each cases, I'm finger pressing it from the top side, but I want to make it go toward the dark. So that way it's easier to actually fold it together and then sew it, and the seam allowances lay nicely toward the dark. I'm nesting them, as you can see here. All right, I'm going to use a product called Acorn Precision Piecing. It's a wonderful product. I have a little stick here that has a little push foam end there. And what I'm going to do is simply dab a little bit on these seam allowances. Actually, what I need to be doing is putting them right on the top, making sure that there's no fold in there. All of that seam allowance needs to be nicely tucked, and I'm putting it on the high side of the seam allowance and pressing it down. This is just really going to help when I press my block, putting just a tiny little bit on the high side, and I'm going to just simply press it with my fingers first, and then I'm going to take it to the iron. Okay, and you'll notice on the inside everything has been pressed toward the dark. So everything is pressed toward these dark squares. So I'm going to take it to the iron and press it, and then I'm going to square this up to 6.5 inches, and I'm going to do that for each and every one. I should clarify, number one, when I'm pressing them with my fingers, I am not pulling anything. I'm just very gently trying to make sure that there are no folds, that that seam allowance is, you're not actually pressing a fold in there. You certainly don't want to do that. And by the high side, it's simply where the seam allowance has been pressed to, and you can feel that when you go to this side of the block. I can tell that the seam allowance is over on this side. So I'm putting the product from the stick, just tiny little dots on this side, and pressing it flat. And then another thing, there are two seams that are going to be toward the light. These two are going to be toward the light, but otherwise everything else is coming toward the dark. And you're going to find that with each and every block, there's always going to be something that ends up on the light side, and that can't really be helped. Now I'm going to go over and press this, and then I'm going to square all of these up to 6.5 inches. And just one more time, just to clarify what I mean by the high side. This fabric is folded this direction, and I can feel the seam allowance is laying underneath this purple. So that's going to be the high side, and this is simply just the white fabric there, so that's obviously the low side. So I'm putting just a few dots of the product along here and kind of spreading it out with my fingers and pressing, making sure I'm not folding in a fold there. You want that to be completely open there, and then I'm going to go ahead and take it over to the iron and get it pressed and square it up. So hopefully that clarified what I meant by the high side. All right, so I used my Omni Grid Square Up ruler. It's a 6.5 inch ruler to square these up. A 6.5 inch ruler really does come in handy in your quilting studio. I use it for so many different things, not only for scrapping up my stash, but also for a lot of square ups, especially when you're creating 12.5 inch blocks. You'll find yourself using it a lot. So I've got this ready to go, and remember that one of your blocks has to go vertically. This is vertical for me. I think it's probably horizontal for you, and then horizontal to me, it's probably vertical for you. But make sure that as you put your block together, that's how you're orienting them, so that everything works beautifully when it goes into the quilt and you see the beautiful twist and turn of the pattern. So now I am going to put the block together, and I'm simply going to bring them together like this. I'll probably web it again and then bring the two rows together, press it and get it squared up to 12.5 inches, and it will be done. I'll do that and I'll be right back. So here is the finished block. I have squared it up to 12.5 inches. I think this should work so that you're seeing this going vertically and this going horizontally. And just a simple block to create using nothing but 2.5 inch either strips or squares. And you could create the whole thing using strips of 2.5 inch fabric that you just subcut into 6.5 inch strip sets or 2.5 inch squares for each one of these. Very simple, very fast, and a fun block to make. I hope that you'll create this. I'd love to see your blocks and your quilts. Thank you so much for stopping by my channel, Quilting with Lori. Again, I'm Lori Dickman, and I really appreciate your stopping by and just checking out my tutorial. Again, this was week 18. This is Twist and Turn, a real fun block. easy one to make. I hope you're putting together a sampler quilt from your very own scrap stash with all of these wonderful blocks. Don't forget to grab that PDF that's in the description box below and save it or print it so that you'll have it for future reference. And don't forget also to post your pictures of quilts and any projects you are working on out on my Facebook page, Quilting with Lori, Scrap Up Your Stash. So check that out, look for that. I'll have links below of all of this so that you can find it easily. And hopefully I'll see pictures of many of your quilts coming soon. So we'll see you in another couple of days. I have many more things in store this week. And thanks so much again. It's Lori Dickman, Quilting with Lori. Thanks for stopping by, and happy quilting.